Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
It was a chill evening in late autumn when an owl arrived at the Auror office, wings heavy with rain, feathers gleaming in the candlelight. Harry Potter sat alone at his desk, sorting through reports of minor hexes gone wrong, when the owl swooped in and dropped a damp letter before him. Its seal bore the crest of the Romanian dragon sanctuary. Harry frowned. He hadn't heard from Charlie Weasley in months. He broke the seal, unrolled the parchment, and felt a cold twist in his stomach as he read. Urgent. Injury beyond healing. Dragon attack under mysterious circumstances. Request immediate Auror assistance. Key, Charlie Weasley. He didn't even finish his tea. Within minutes, he was out the door, his cloak flaring behind him as he strode through the ministry's corridors. By nightfall, Harry stood on the edge of the Carpathian Mountains. Wind howled through the rocky slopes, carrying the smell of smoke and ash. He followed the flicker of torches to a long, wooden lodge where the dragon keepers gathered in silence. Inside, Charlie lay on a cot, his arm bound in layers of charmed bandages that pulsed with an eerie, greenish light. "Merlin, Charlie?" Harry breathed. "What happened to you?" Charlie gave a faint smile, pale and drawn. "It wasn't supposed to be dangerous. A Romanian longhorn. Calm as they come, but this one, it was different, Harry. It looked at me as if it knew me. Then it struck. One blow and I felt something burn through my veins. I faced dragon fire before, but this was cursed." Harry leaned closer, inspecting the wound. The skin around it shimmered with unnatural heat, scales of light forming and vanishing like ghostly embers. He could feel dark magic radiating from it, subtle, yet unmistakable. "St. Mungo's couldn't help?" he asked. Charlie shook his head weakly. "They tried everything. The wound closes, then opens again as if the magic itself won't let go." At that moment, the door opened. A young witch entered, her cloak still wet from the storm. Her eyes, a sharp gray-green, caught Harry's attention immediately. "This is Alara Vane," Charlie said softly. "My apprentice." She saw the whole thing. Alara inclined her head respectfully, though there was tension in her gaze. "Auror Potter. I was there when the dragon struck. I swear it wasn't a natural creature. Its eyes were red, and there was something beneath its scales, like black lightning. I tried to stop it, but it broke through the enchantments. Then, after it attacked, it flew north, toward the mountains where the wild ones live." Harry nodded slowly. "Then that's where we'll start." As night deepened, the wind outside rose into a gale, rattling the shutters. Within the lodge, dragon keepers whispered prayers to ancient spirits, fearful of the omen. Harry stayed beside Charlie until dawn. At first light, the bandages began to smoke faintly, glowing with inner heat. Charlie groaned, his back arching in pain. "Ilara!" Harry called, but she was already beside him, wand drawn, muttering a series of soft spells. Blue light washed over Charlie's arm, but the wound only flared brighter, the air filled with the scent of burning scales and ozone. "Stop!" Harry commanded. "You'll make it worse." Alara froze, trembling. "It reacts to healing magic, as if it feeds on it," she whispered. Harry's expression darkened. "Then this isn't just a curse, it's a trap." Moments later, the door burst open again. A weathered man in Dragon Keeper robes stumbled in. "The Northern Watchfires are out," he gasped. "Something's moving in the ravines. Something large." Harry met Alara's eyes. "Get your gear. We're going after it." Charlie tried to sit up, but Harry gently pressed him back. "You're not coming. I'll find out what did this, and I'll bring back whatever answer we need to save you." Charlie managed a faint grin. "Always the hero, eh, Harry? Just be careful. That thing's not like anything I've ever seen." Harry squeezed his shoulder. "I'll be back before sundown." But deep inside, he knew the truth. Nothing about this felt ordinary. The wound, the dragon, the strange resistance to magic, it all pointed to something ancient, something darker than the usual remnants of Voldemort's time. Outside, the mountain peaks loomed high and cold against a gray dawn. Harry and Alara rode broomsticks into the rising mist, the lodge shrinking behind them until it vanished entirely. Below them, the forest stretched for miles, dense, wild, untouched by human hands. They followed the dragon's trail by the faint scorch marks on the trees, the melted patches of snow, and the occasional claw mark gouged deep into stone. As the sun climbed, the air grew heavy with an unnatural stillness. No birds sang, no wind stirred the branches. It was as though the forest itself held its breath. Then from far ahead came a low, rumbling growl that rolled through the mountains like thunder. Harry slowed his broom. "That's it," he murmured. "That's our dragon." Alara nodded, her face pale but determined. And in that moment, before the next sound came, Harry thought he saw something move in the shadows below. Not the dragon, something smaller, watching them, something that vanished when he turned his eyes upon it. The first true warning that this would be no ordinary hunt. The mist thickened as they flew deeper into the mountains, the pale light of dawn fading behind shrouds of gray. Harry and Alara descended into a ravine where the trees twisted like claws and the rocks gleamed with frost. The trail of scorched earth continued below them, patches of blackened moss and smoldering roots that still gave off faint heat. They landed beside a narrow stream, its waters bubbling with strange warmth despite the winter chill. Alara crouched and dipped her fingers into it. "This isn't ordinary dragon fire," she said softly. "It's tainted." "The magic in the burn lingers even after the flames are gone." Harry knelt beside her, examining a cracked stone that pulsed faintly beneath its surface, veins of red and black glimmering like molten metal. He frowned. "You're right, it's almost alive." A sudden gust of wind swept through the ravine, carrying with it a distant roar that shook the ground. The sound echoed between the cliffs, deeper and harsher than any dragon's cry Harry had ever heard. He and Alara exchanged a look, wordless but full of understanding. They moved forward on foot, wands drawn, careful not to make a sound. As they went, they found more signs. Trees torn from their roots, rocks melted into glass, and strange runes carved into the cliff faces. The runes glowed faintly, their patterns uneven, as if written by a trembling hand. "Alara," Harry said quietly, "do you recognize these symbols?" She hesitated. "They're old. I've seen them in a few forbidden texts, used in enchantments meant to bind magical creatures. But these look altered, twisted." Harry brushed his hand over one of the runes. It pulsed beneath his touch, and a whisper rose from the stone. A hiss, in a language he didn't understand. He pulled his hand back sharply. "Someone's controlling it," he murmured. Someone used these to turn the dragon into a weapon. They climbed higher along the cliffside, following the trail until it opened into a wide plateau. There, resting in a hollow of scorched earth, lay the dragon. It was massive, its scales a deep bronze black, its wings torn and smoking. The creature's eyes glowed faintly red, but there was pain in them, not fury. When it lifted its head, Harry saw that its throat was bound by a collar of dark metal, etched with the same runes they'd seen below. Alara gasped. That's a binding charm, but it's fused into the creature's flesh. Whoever did this, there's no undoing it without destroying the dragon. Harry stepped forward cautiously, wand raised but not to strike. Easy now, he said softly. We're not here to harm you. The dragon let out a low growl that shook the ground. Smoke curled from its nostrils, but its gaze never left Harry's. For a moment, something flickered behind those crimson eyes, a spark of intelligence or perhaps recognition. Then the runes along its collar flared. The dragon roared and reared up, its wings beating with thunderous force. Fire burst from its jaws, white hot and unnatural. Harry dove aside, feeling the air sear around him. "Alara, get back!" he shouted. But she didn't retreat. She raised her wand, shouting a containment charm. A blue barrier flashed around the dragon's head, and for an instant the creature faltered, its flames sputtering out. Harry seized the chance, darting forward and striking the collar with a cutting spell. Sparks flew, the metal cracked, but instead of breaking, it absorbed the spell and sent it back. A shockwave burst outward, hurling Harry to the ground. When the smoke cleared, the dragon was gone. Only scorch marks remained, and in the center of them the shattered remnants of one rune stone still glowed faintly. Alara helped him to his feet. Her face was pale, streaked with soot. "It disapparated," she whispered. "Dragons aren't supposed to be able to do that." "They can't," Harry said grimly. "Not unless someone gave it that power." He turned toward the rune stone and knelt. On its cracked surface was a symbol unlike the others, a serpent twined around a wand. His breath caught. "That's the mark of Morvenroll," he said, "one of the Death Eaters who vanished after the war. He was obsessed with magical creatures, tried to breed them with enchantments. The Ministry thought he died years ago." Alara's eyes widened. "If he's alive and he's controlling dragons..." Harry nodded. "Then he's planning something far bigger than a single attack." Before they could say more, a sharp hiss cut through the air. From the shadow of the trees, cloaked figures emerged, 3 of them, faces hidden behind black masks. "Potter," one of them said, his voice low and mocking. "Always turning up where you're not wanted." Harry raised his wand. "You're late to the war. I suggest you surrender before you end up in Azkaban with the rest of them." The masked man laughed. "You think the war ever ended?" In an instant, green light flashed. Harry ducked, returning a disarming spell that struck one of the attackers squarely, sending his wand flying. Alara joined him, her spells quick and sharp, binding ropes of light that tangled around another's legs. But the third figure moved differently, faster. He aimed a curse not at Harry, but at the ground beneath them. The earth split open, spewing red smoke. The attackers vanished into it, disappearing as suddenly as they'd appeared. When the smoke cleared, silence returned to the mountain. Only the faint crackle of burned leaves remained. Harry lowered his wand, breathing hard. "They were guarding something here," he said. "Those runes, the dragon, it's all connected. Rolls behind this, I can feel it." Alara stared at the scorched earth. If he's using dragons, he could raise an army that no wizard could stand against. Harry glanced toward the dark horizon. The wind carried with it a faint, echoing roar, distant but unmistakable. "Then we'd better find him before he finds us," he said. And as they made their way down the mountain, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that something else was watching them from the shadows, something that moved when he did not look, that whispered when the wind fell still. Somewhere in the darkness, a new fire had been kindled, and before long the world would feel its heat. They reached the lower slopes of the mountain as night settled once more, and the wind had turned sharp as a blade. Their broomsticks could go no farther. The air was too thin and cold, the currents too unpredictable, so Harry and Alara made camp in a hollow beneath a jut of black stone. A faint fire flickered between them, its warmth held fast by a charm against the mountain's chill. Harry sat in silence, mending a tear in his cloak with a murmured spell, his thoughts running like a restless tide. Across from him, Alara crouched over a pile of scorched fragments, the remnants of the rune stones they had gathered. She moved her fingers over one piece, tracing the edges of the carved sigils. "They're layered," she murmured. "Not just one enchantment, but several, woven together. That's why they couldn't be broken by a single counter curse. It's ancient magic, but corrupted somehow." Harry looked up, his expression hard. "You said you'd seen something like this before. Where?" She hesitated, then spoke slowly. "When I was a child, my parents worked in the ministries department for the regulation of magical creatures. They studied dragon bloodlines. One day, they brought home a crate of scales from the Carpathian wilds, supposedly for analysis. But those scales had runes carved into them, just like these. My mother burned them, said they were too dangerous to keep. A week later, the house caught fire. I was the only one who survived." Harry's gaze softened. "You think that was connected?" Alara nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "I didn't understand it then. But now, I think whoever made those runes wanted something more than control. They wanted to fuse magic and life, to make creatures that could act as vessels." "Vessels for what?" "For dark power," she whispered. Harry said nothing. He stared into the flames, listening to the crackle of wood and the distant cry of wind in the peaks. He had heard too many tales of dark wizards seeking immortality, seeking dominion over the living. But this was different. This was new, and that made it worse. At last he rose, brushed the ashes from his cloak, and turned toward the narrow path that wound upward into the dark. "We'll rest a few hours. Then we follow the trail north. If Roll's still alive, we'll find him near the dragons." The night passed in uneasy silence. Once Harry woke to the faint rustle of wings and thought he saw a shadow glide across the stars, vast and silent. But when he blinked, it was gone. At dawn, they began the climb again. Frost glittered on every surface, and the trees thinned until only bare rock remained. As the sun rose pale and cold, they came upon a strange sight, a cave mouth, half hidden by fallen boulders. From within, a dull red glow pulsed like a heartbeat. Ilara's breath caught. "That's no natural light." Harry nodded, wands ready. They entered the cave slowly, stepping over shards of blackened stone. The air was thick with the smell of burnt sulfur and iron. Deeper inside, they found the source of the glow, a vast underground chamber where the walls shimmered with runes. And in the center, bound by chains of flame, was another dragon. This one was smaller than the first, silver-scaled and trembling. Its eyes were clear, pleading. The chains that held it were burning into its flesh, forming sigils that bled red light. "Sweet Merlin," Alara whispered, "they're turning them into conduits." Harry stepped closer, fury rising in his chest. "Who would do this?" a voice answered from the shadows beyond the dragon. "I would." A figure emerged, tall and cloaked, the hem of his robes brushing against molten stone. His face was pale and lined with years of obsession, but his eyes gleamed with cold triumph. "Harry Potter," he said softly. "I had wondered when you'd arrive. You always were drawn to the scent of fire." Harry's hand tightened on his wand. "Morven Roll." Roll smiled faintly. "So the Ministry still remembers my name." "I'm flattered. What are you doing here? What have you done to these creatures?" "Liberating them," Roll said calmly. "Dragons are the purest of magical beings, untamed, unyielding. Yet for centuries, wizards have chained them, broken them for sport. I merely return the favor. I give them power they were denied." "By cursing them?" Harry spat. "By binding them until they're nothing but tools for your madness?" Raoul's eyes glinted. "Madness? No, Potter. Vision. I've learned to merge dark enchantment with dragon essence. They are becoming something greater, something the world will fear again." Alara stepped forward, anger flashing in her eyes. "You're killing them." Roll's gaze slid to her, and he smiled. "Ah, the vain girl. I remember your parents, brilliant fools. They thought they could keep my research from me. Their deaths were unfortunate, but necessary. You, however, you might be useful." Alara's wand snapped upward, but before she could cast, the dragon let out a shuddering roar. Its chains flared, and the runes on the walls blazed in answer. The chamber shook violently. Harry shouted, "Protego!" as a wave of fire swept toward them. The shield held barely. Roll's laughter echoed through the smoke. "You can't stop what's begun, Potter. The binding is complete. Soon every dragon in these mountains will obey." The ground split open, and from the chasm, molten light burst upward, swallowing the walls. Harry grabbed Alara's arm, pulling her back, as the dragon tore free of its chains. The creature's wings spread wide, its roar shaking the cavern to its core. They barely escaped before the cave collapsed behind them in a thunderous crash. Outside, the mountain burned. Columns of fire erupted from hidden vents, streaking the sky with crimson light. The newly freed dragon soared upward, shrieking with rage and pain. Harry and Alara crouched behind a ridge, gasping for breath. "He's controlling them through the runes," Alara said hoarsely. "Even if that dragon's free, it's still under his command." Harry wiped soot from his face. "Then we find the source. There has to be a focus, something binding the runes to him." Alara hesitated. "And if we can't break it, then we destroy it." Far above them, the dragon wheeled in circles, a black silhouette against the rising sun. Its eyes blazed red, and its roar echoed down the valley, a sound both terrible and sorrowful. In that moment, Harry understood. This battle was not only for the wounded and the living, but for creatures who had never asked to be made into weapons. And somewhere deep within the mountain, Morven Roll's voice drifted on the wind, low and sure. "You can't fight fire, Potter. You can only become it." Harry drew a steady breath, his resolve hardening like steel. "Then we'll see," he said. "We'll see whose fire burns brighter." The fires burned all night on the mountainside. By dawn, ash drifted through the air like gray snow, settling upon Harry and Alara as they trudged through the charred forest. The trees stood black and skeletal, their bark scorched, their branches twisted like grasping hands. Smoke clung to the ground in ghostly ribbons, and beneath it all, the low tremor of dragon roars rolled through the earth like distant thunder. They had not spoken much since their escape from Roll's cavern. Both knew what they had seen. The dragons were no longer creatures of nature. They had become vessels, living conduits of dark magic. Somewhere among the peaks, Roll was binding them still, one by one, to his will. At last, Harry stopped beside a ridge where the mountain dipped into a narrow gorge. He knelt, brushing aside the soot to reveal the faint trace of a rune carved into the stone below. It glowed faintly with red light, pulsing like a heartbeat. "He's using the entire range," he muttered. "Each rune links to the next. Together they form a circle of control." Alara crouched beside him, her face pale in the dim light. A spell of that scale, it would take enormous power. He's channeling it through the dragons themselves. That's why they're suffering. He's drawing from their life force. Harry rose, dusting ash from his hands. "Then we break the circle." Before they could move, the ground shuddered again. From the gorge below, a deep rumbling rose, followed by a burst of flame that licked the cliffside. A dragon surged upward, scales gleaming like molten bronze. It hovered in the smoky air, eyes blazing with crimson light, its great wings beating gusts of cinders toward them. Alara raised her wand. "It's one of his bound ones." Harry stepped forward, his voice steady. "No spells yet. It might still have its mind." The dragon roared, the sound splitting the morning sky. Its breath seared the rocks where they stood moments before. They dove aside, Harry rolling behind a fallen tree, Alara scrambling down the slope. "Try to reach its eyes," Harry shouted. "If there's any will left in it, it'll understand." Alara braced herself and sent a flare of blue light skyward, a signaling charm. For a heartbeat, the dragon hesitated, its gaze following the glow. Then the runes along its chest flared again, and it lunged downward. Harry pointed his wand. Confringo. The spell struck the air before the dragon's face, exploding into shards of orange flame. The blast didn't harm it, but it blinded the creature for a moment, just long enough for Alara to climb higher and strike the rune circle beneath its chest. A sharp crack split the air, and the red glow flickered. The dragon convulsed mid-air, letting out a pained roar. Then slowly it drew back its wings and hovered uncertainly. The crimson light in its eyes dimmed. "It's working!" Alara cried. "The runes can be broken!" But before hope could take root, the dragon let out a final shuddering roar, and the glow flared once more. The creature turned and vanished into the clouds, its strength renewed. Harry cursed under his breath. Raoul must have rebounded. He's watching us through them. Alara pressed a hand to her chest, breathing hard. Then we'll need to find the anchor, the object that connects him to the spell. Harry nodded grimly, and I think I know where he's keeping it. They followed the gorge north, guided by the sound of the dragons and the trail of charred runes. By midday, the path led them to the edge of a ruined fortress, half swallowed by the mountain itself. Its towers were cracked and leaning, its gates sealed by thick layers of rock and ice, but from within came the unmistakable pulse of enchantment, the same rhythm that beat beneath the rune stones. "Alara," Harry said quietly, "this was once a stronghold of the old dragon tamers, the Order of Dravonicus. It's been abandoned since the 15th century. Until Raoul found it," she said. They approached the gate, careful not to touch the blackened stone. Every surface was covered in runes, thousands of them woven together like veins of fire. Harry raised his wand. Finite incantatem. The spell struck the wall and vanished without effect. It's shielded, Alara murmured, but maybe not completely. She placed her hands upon the stone, closing her eyes. After a moment, she whispered, "The key is sound. It listens. The runes are bound by rhythm, not words." Harry frowned. "You mean like a melody?" She nodded. "If we can match the tone, we can unseal it." He watched as she drew her wand and began to hum softly, her voice low and sure. The sound echoed through the ruins, and one by one the runes began to shimmer in time with her song. The gate shuddered. Cracks appeared across its surface, glowing white-hot. "Now!" she cried. Harry raised his wand. "Bombarda Maxima!" The explosion shook the mountain. The gate shattered into a storm of fire and ash, revealing a vast hall beyond. They stepped inside cautiously. The air was thick with the scent of metal and smoke. Chains hung from the ceiling, each holding a glowing crystal filled with swirling red mist, and at the far end, upon a dais of black stone, stood a large chest covered in runes that burned with steady light. "The anchor," Harry said. They moved toward it, every step echoing in the silence. But before they could reach the dais, a voice drifted from above. "You learn quickly, Potter." But too late. Raoul descended the stairs. From the shadows above, his robes trailing smoke, his eyes gleamed with triumph. Around him, the air shimmered, and through the haze, ghostly outlines of dragons appeared, phantoms bound to his will. "You've seen my work," he said softly. "You know its beauty. Why destroy what you could master?" Harry raised his wand. "Because you're not mastering anything, you're torturing living beings." Raoul smiled faintly. "Torture is the word of the weak. I call it transcendence." The runes on the chest flared as he raised his hand. From the chains above, red mist poured downward, coiling around him like serpents. His voice deepened, echoing through the hall. "I am no longer bound by the limits of mortal spellcraft, Potter. I am Dragonfire incarnate." The ground trembled. The red mist gathered into a swirling storm that filled the chamber. And then, with a sound like thunder breaking, Raoul vanished into the mist, only to reappear at its center, his eyes burning the same crimson as the dragon's. Harry braced himself. "Alara, now!" She raised her wand, shouting a counter-curse. A flash of white light burst forth, striking the chest. The runes cracked. The storm faltered. Raoul let out a roar, not human, but something far deeper. The ground split beneath them, and a burst of fire erupted between Harry and Alara, throwing them apart. When the light faded, Raoul was gone. The chest lay shattered, its contents scattered across the stone floor. Among them, a single shard of metal glowed faintly, the fragment of a dragon scale, etched with dark runes. Harry staggered to his feet, coughing. "He's not finished," he said hoarsely. "He's bound himself to the dragons. If we kill him, they die too." Alara picked up the shard, her hand trembling. "Then we must find another way. A spell strong enough to sever him without destroying them." Harry nodded, his gaze hard. "Then we go to the source of the fire, to where the bindings began." Outside, the mountains burned brighter than ever. The war for the dragons had only begun. Snow fell, for the first time in weeks, as Harry and Alara left the ruined fortress behind. The air had turned sharp and thin, the kind that burned the lungs with every breath. The sky was the color of iron, heavy with storm clouds, and beneath it the mountains loomed vast and silent like sleeping giants. The fires that had raged through the night were dying now, leaving the world gray and hollow. They followed a narrow path carved through the rock, the trail leading higher toward the peaks where no trees grew. Each step crunched over frost and scattered ash. Harry's cloak was torn at the shoulder from the explosion in Roll's lair, but he scarcely noticed. His mind turned again and again to the dragon bound in flame, to the look in its eyes, the wild terror of a creature that once ruled the skies and now served as a prisoner of dark magic. "We need to reach the summit before nightfall," he said quietly. "If the bindings began here, that's where we'll find the source." Ilara nodded but did not answer. Her face was pale beneath her hood, and she clutched her wand close, as though it were a lifeline. The shard she had taken from Roll's chest, etched with those terrible runes, hung from a cord around her neck, pulsing faintly with red light. It had not dimmed since the battle. By midday the wind began to howl. The trail narrowed to a ledge that skirted the edge of a deep chasm. Far below, the remnants of Roll's enchantments shimmered like embers, threading through the snow like veins of fire. Harry stopped to catch his breath, glancing down. "He's drawing power from the mountain itself," he murmured. "Every rune, every stone, it's all connected. He's woven himself into the land." Alara's voice was barely audible over the wind. "Then we'll have to unweave it." They pressed on. As they climbed, the air thickened with magic, a pressure that made the skin prickle and the heart race. The clouds above seemed to move with purpose, swirling around the summit in a slow, spiraling storm. When they finally crested the last ridge, they beheld the source of it all. A vast crater spread before them, its center glowing with molten light. Circling above were 3 dragons, huge, terrible creatures, wreathed in fire and shadow. Their cries echoed like thunder, and their wings beat the storm into frenzy. At the heart of the crater stood a great spire of black crystal pulsing with red light. "That's it," Alara whispered, "in the heart of binding." Harry felt the heat wash over him as he approached the edge. "He's using it to anchor himself to the dragons." Even as he spoke, the air shimmered, and Morven Roll appeared before the crystal. His robes were gone, replaced by armor that gleamed like scaled obsidian. The runes along his skin glowed with fire, and his eyes blazed red as a dragon's heart. "Still chasing shadows, Potter?" His voice rolled like distant thunder. "You can't destroy what has become part of the mountain. I am its flame. I am its fury." Harry raised his wand. "You've taken their freedom. You've turned them into weapons." Roll smiled faintly. "Freedom is chaos. Power is purpose. I have simply given the dragons what they were denied, a will greater than their own." Alara stepped forward. "You mean your will?" Roll's gaze shifted to her. For the first time, something like recognition passed across his face. "Ah, the last vein. Your family tried to destroy my work once. You'll finish what they began, will you?" "I'll end it," she said fiercely. Roll's laughter echoed through the crater. "Then prove it." He raised his hand, and the dragons roared as one. Fire erupted from the crater's heart, streaking toward the sky. The mountain trembled. Harry barely had time to throw up a shield before the blast struck. He felt the heat tear through the spell, searing his arm. "Go!" he shouted to Alara. "The crystal. Destroy it." She darted forward, weaving between bursts of flame. The air screamed with the force of the storm. Roll's voice rose above it, chanting in a language older than English, each word a hammer beat of magic. The dragons dived, their wings blotting out the sun. One swept low, its talons grazing the ground, and Harry leapt aside as the shock wave knocked him off his feet. He rolled, came up again, and fired a stunning spell, useless against creatures of such size, but enough to draw their attention away from Alara. She reached the base of the crystal. The runes carved into its surface pulsed in rhythm with her pendant. With trembling fingers, she pulled the shard from around her neck and pressed it to the stone. The crystal screamed. A shock of light erupted, so bright it split the storm apart. The dragons faltered mid-flight, their roars turning to cries of pain. Roll turned sharply, his fury breaking through his calm. "No!" Harry seized his chance. "Expelliarmus!" Roll deflected it with a wave of his hand, sending Harry flying backward. But the spell had been enough. The crystal cracked. Ilara's pendant shattered in her grasp, spilling molten light into the air. The bindings began to unravel. One by one, the dragons broke free of their enchantments. The red glow in their eyes dimmed, replaced by a clear golden fire. They circled once as if testing their wings anew, and then turned their fury upon Roll. He screamed a word of power, but it came too late. A wall of fire engulfed him, searing through his armor. When the flames faded, he was gone. Only a shadow upon the rock remained. Harry struggled to his feet, shielding his eyes from the glare. The crystal crumbled to dust, and the molten pit beneath it cooled. The dragons, freed at last, rose higher into the sky, their cries echoing with something like triumph. Ilara knelt at the edge of the crater, her hands glowing faintly from the magic that still burned within them. Harry hurried to her side. "Are you all right?" She nodded weakly. "It's over. The binding's broken." Harry looked toward the sky. Maybe. But Rahl bound himself to their fire. When he burned, part of that fire might have found another place to live. Ilara met his gaze. "You mean inside you?" He said nothing. The burn on his arm had changed. It shimmered faintly like scales beneath the skin. He flexed his fingers and felt heat stir in his veins. A hush fell over the mountain. The dragon circled once more, then vanished into the clouds. Snow began to fall again, soft and white, covering the scorched earth as though the world sought to forget. Harry turned away from the crater, the glow beneath his skin fading but never gone. "Let's go home," he said quietly. As they descended, the wind carried a low rumble through the peaks, not quite thunder, not quite a roar. Somewhere far away the dragons called to one another, free but not forgotten. And when Harry looked down at the scar that burned faintly on his arm, he understood. The wound inflicted by a dragon would never truly heal. It was a mark, not of curse, but of connection, a reminder that light and fire are never entirely separate things. He pulled his cloak tighter against the cold. "Come on, Ilara," he said, his voice steady now. "The ministry will want to hear about this. And Charlie will live." She smiled faintly through her exhaustion. "Do you think they'll believe us?" Harry glanced toward the horizon where the dragons had flown. "Not at first, but they'll see the skies soon enough." Together they made their way down the mountain, leaving behind the ruins, the fire, and the whisper of ancient wings. But in the quiet of the falling snow, Harry could still feel the heartbeat of the dragon fire within him, a living ember that would never fade, and though he did not yet know it, that Ember would one day be called upon again when darkness returned to claim the skies. For in every age there must always be one who bears the fire. Days passed since the fires of the mountain had gone out, and winter spread its cloak across the highlands of Romania. The sky was heavy with pale light, and the wind carried a ghostly stillness, as if the world itself had paused to breathe after the fury that had shaken it. Harry and Alara made their way back to the dragon sanctuary, following trails half buried by snow. Behind them, the peaks loomed quiet once more, black scars against a sky of pearl and gray. The world below, however, was not as still. Word of the storm had reached the sanctuary long before they did. When they arrived, the keepers gathered in silence, their faces pale with fear and awe. Charlie Weasley stood at the forefront, his wounded arm now bound in new bandages that no longer glowed or burned. "Harry," he said, stepping forward, his voice rough with disbelief. "You did it. The wound stopped bleeding the moment the fires went out. Whatever curse that thing left in me, it's gone." Harry clasped his shoulder. "It wasn't me." Alara found the way. Alara lowered her hood, her eyes weary but steady. "It's finished," she said softly. "Raoul's bindings are broken. The dragons are free." Charlie's eyes widened. "You saw them?" Harry nodded. 3 of them. Wild ones. They'll stay clear of men for a long while, but they're alive and unshackled. A murmur passed through the keepers, half in relief, half in wonder. For dragons to be freed from a curse woven by dark magic was no small miracle. But Harry saw in the faces of some a shadow of worry. Even free, dragons were power made flesh, and men feared what they could not control. That night, a feast was held in the lodge. Simple fare, hearty stew and roasted meat, but it warmed the soul. Yet amid the laughter and the crackling of the hearth, Harry sat apart by the window, gazing into the falling snow. His arm burned faintly under his sleeve, the skin beneath glimmering with that strange inner light. Alara approached quietly, a mug of steaming cider in hand. She offered it to him, and he accepted with a nod. "You haven't slept," she said. "Not much?" She studied him in silence. "It's the wound, isn't it?" Harry flexed his fingers, feeling the faint hum of warmth beneath his skin. "It doesn't hurt anymore, but I can feel it. Like there's something alive in it. The fire roll left behind." Alara set her mug down and leaned on the window ledge beside him. "You remember what he said? That he became part of the dragon's flame. When the bindings broke, the fire had to go somewhere. Into me." Harry's tone was calm, but the weight of the words settled heavily between them. "It won't fade, will it?" "I don't think so," she admitted. "Dragon fire isn't meant for humans. It's ancient magic, older than wands or spells. If it's inside you, it's because it chose to stay." Harry gave a quiet, wry smile. "Seems I can't ever escape being marked by something powerful." Alara looked at him then, her eyes kind. "Not all marks are curses, Harry." Before he could reply, a sharp knock echoed through the hall. A young keeper burst through the door, his breath clouding in the cold. "Charlie, or Potter, you'd best come quick. Something's landed beyond the ridge." They followed him out into the night. Snow fell thick and slow, muffling every sound. Beyond the outer fence, where the forest met the open sky, a great shadow lay in the snow, a dragon, vast and silver-scaled, its wings folded like sails against its body. "It's the one from the cavern," Alara whispered. "The one that was bound." Harry stepped closer, wand raised, but the dragon did not stir. Its eyes, once crimson with Roll's curse, now shimmered gold. As he approached, the creature lifted its head and fixed him with a gaze that pierced through the dark. Then it bowed. The keepers gasped. Dragons did not bow to men, yet this one bent its neck low, exhaling a plume of warm smoke that coiled around Harry like a sigh. He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched the scales above its brow. They were warm to the touch, humming faintly with power. In that moment, he felt something stir within him, a pulse that matched his own heartbeat. The fire beneath his skin flared in answer, and for a brief instant he saw through the dragon's eyes, the mountains, the wind, the boundless sky. When the vision faded, the dragon let out a low, rumbling cry and spread its wings. With a mighty sweep, it lifted from the snow and vanished into the storm. Alara stared after it, her breath misting in the cold. "It knows you," she said. Harry watched the sky where the dragon had disappeared. "Maybe it remembers the fire." The keepers were silent for a long while. Then Charlie spoke, awe in his voice. "You've been marked by a dragon, Harry. That's something not even Gringotts records could boast of." Harry managed a small laugh, though his thoughts were far away. "Let's hope it doesn't get me into as much trouble as the last mark I carried." The snow thickened, and they returned to the lodge. But that night, Harry could not sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the faint warmth that pulsed beneath his skin. It was not painful, just constant, steady, alive. At last he rose and went outside. The sky was clear again, and stars glittered across the heavens. Somewhere far above, a distant roar echoed over the mountains, a dragon's cry, long and mournful. He listened, and for a moment he could almost understand it. "Do you hear them?" Alara's voice came from behind him. She had followed, her cloak drawn tight against the chill. "Yes," he said softly. "They're calling to each other, maybe saying goodbye." She came to stand beside him, "Or maybe calling to you." Harry didn't answer. His eyes remained on the stars. A part of him knew she was right. Something inside him had changed. The fire that Roll had unleashed, the curse that had burned Charlie, the spell that had enslaved the dragons. It all lived now in him, transformed but not gone. He would need to understand it, master it, before it mastered him. When dawn broke, Harry packed his things. Charlie protested at first, but Harry only smiled. "You'll need to rebuild the sanctuary," he said. "The dragons will come back when they're ready." "And where will you go?" Alara asked quietly. "Home," he said, glancing eastward toward the horizon, "but not to rest." As they watched, the morning light broke over the peaks, turning the snow to gold. Far above, a shadow crossed the sun, a dragon soaring alone through the clouds. Harry shaded his eyes and smiled faintly. The fire in his veins burned brighter for a moment, answering the call of the sky. The dragon wheeled once, then vanished beyond the light. Harry turned away. "Come on, Alara. There's work to do." And together they walked down from the mountain, leaving behind the echoes of fire and flight, carrying with them the secret of a bond that would outlast both magic and time. For though the war had ended and the wounds had healed, the fire of dragons had found a new keeper, and its story was only beginning. London lay cloaked in rain when Harry and Alara returned to England. The wind moaned across the rooftops of the old city, carrying with it the chill of early spring. The streets around the Ministry of Magic glistened like black glass, and the lamplight shimmered through the mist like stars caught close to the ground. Harry paused at the entrance to the ministry, his cloak dripping from the long journey. The golden fireplaces of the atrium flared as they stepped through, but even the familiar warmth seemed distant, hollow. Since the war, the ministry had rebuilt itself with clean marble and bright banners, but Harry could still feel ghosts in these halls, memories that clung like ivy. Oars turned as he passed. Some nodded in respect, others whispered. There had been rumors already of a dragon attack, of forbidden magic reborn in the mountains of Romania, and though Harry had sent word of Roll's defeat, the story that reached London was already twisting into legend. At his office door, he found Kingsley Shacklebolt waiting. The Minister for Magic stood tall as ever, his deep voice calm but edged with concern. "Harry," he said, "welcome home. I hear your mission in Romania was eventful." Harry managed a tired smile. "That's one word for it." Kingsley's gaze flicked to Alara, who stood a pace behind. "And you must be Alara Vane. We've received your report as well. You've both done extraordinary work, though some in the Department of Mysteries are deeply unsettled by the account." "I can imagine," Harry said quietly. Roll's research was unlike anything the Ministry has seen. He didn't just use dark magic. He rewrote the laws that bind it. Kingsley folded his hands. "Then I must ask, Harry, what became of his work?" Harry hesitated. The truth pulsed faintly under his sleeve, warm as a heartbeat. "Destroyed," he said at last. "The bindings were shattered and the dragons freed." Kingsley studied him for a long moment. His eyes, wise and weary, missed little. "Good," he said finally, "though I can't shake the feeling that this isn't the end of it." Neither could Harry. When Kingsley had gone, Harry sat at his desk, staring at the paperwork stacked high before him. Yet he could not bring himself to lift a quill. His arm itched beneath his sleeve, the mark of the dragon wound glimmering faintly like liquid gold. He covered it with his hand, but the warmth did not fade. That night, sleep refused to come. He dreamt of fire and wings, of mountains splitting apart, and of Roll's voice echoing through the smoke. "You can't fight fire, Potter. You can only become it." He woke before dawn, his heart pounding. The room was dark, yet the faintest glow flickered beneath his skin. For an instant, his shadow on the wall was not his own. It bore the outline of wings. He stood at once, breathing hard. The air in the flat was heavy, stifling. He opened the window, letting in the cool breath of the city, and watched the river shimmer beneath the moonlight. He pressed a hand to his arm, whispering a charm to still the fire within. The light dimmed, but he could still feel it, deep and constant. When morning came, Ilara found him already in the Auror training room. The air smelled faintly of ash. A series of scorch marks marred the floor. She took one look at him and understood. "It's growing stronger," she said. Harry nodded. "I tried to suppress it. It doesn't obey wand work anymore. It answers only when I will it." "Then it's bound to your intent," she murmured, "like the dragons. The more you fight it, the more it resists. It's not a curse anymore. It's a part of you." He gave a grim smile. "That's what worries me." Over the following days, strange things began to happen across Britain. Flocks of birds fled the north in great black waves. Storms flared without warning, crackling with unnatural light. And in the far reaches of Scotland, A farmer reported seeing a shape streak across the clouds, something vast and winged, glowing red in the night. The ministry dispatched scouts, but none returned with proof. Yet Harry felt it before anyone told him, the same pulse that had burned through the mountains. A dragon was near. By the end of the week, the call became too strong to ignore. He left a note for Kingsley and gathered his cloak. Alara met him at the Flu Network, already dressed for travel. "You knew I'd follow," she said. "I was counting on it." They arrived in the Scottish Highlands at dusk. The air was sharp and wet with rain, the moors stretching endless beneath a bruised sky. They followed the pull of the fire through the mist until they reached a glen bordered by cliffs. There they found the remains of an old stone circle, weathered and half-buried, carved with runes nearly identical to those from Romania. Harry knelt beside one of the stones. Roll's work spread farther than we knew. He wasn't just binding dragons, he was awakening them. A sudden gust of wind howled through the glen, scattering the mist. Then came the sound, a deep, resonant cry that rolled through the clouds like the voice of thunder itself. The ground trembled. From the sky descended a shape vast enough to blot out the stars. A dragon, black as midnight, its eyes burning gold. Its wings beat with the force of a gale as it landed upon the hill, scattering stones like pebbles. Alara gasped. "It's the fourth one, the last of Roll's bound creatures." Harry stepped forward, wand in hand, but the dragon did not strike. Instead, it lowered its head, smoke curling from its nostrils, and stared at him with ancient, knowing eyes. The fire within Harry's arm answered. Light flared along his veins, golden and fierce. The dragon's eyes widened. "You feel it too," Harry murmured. In his mind, a voice whispered, not words, but something older, deeper. Images flashed before him, the mountain, the dragons chained, Roll's final scream. Then came another vision, a glimpse of darkness spreading far to the north, where the sea met the sky. Harry stumbled back, breathless. "Something's coming," he said. Roll's fire wasn't destroyed, it fled. Alara's face went pale. "Fled where?" "Into something else," he said slowly. "Something bigger. It's drawing the dragons north." The dragon before them roared, spreading its wings. A storm rose with it, fierce and sudden. Harry turned to Alara. "We can't let it go alone. If the fire's gathering again, we have to follow." She hesitated, glancing up at the creature's burning eyes. "And if we can't stop it this time?" Harry's jaw tightened. "Then we'll burn with it." The dragon gave a final cry, then leapt into the storm, vanishing into the clouds. Harry looked down at his arm, the golden light flaring once more. It no longer felt foreign. It felt like destiny calling, like the fire itself was leading him onward. "Come on," he said, his voice steady and low. "North." And as they vanished into the storm after the dragon, lightning split the sky. And far beyond the clouds, an ancient power stirred, one that had slept since the dawn of dragons, now waking to a world unprepared for its return. The sea beyond the northern isles was wild and gray when Harry and Alara reached it, its waves rising like mountains beneath a sky of storm. The wind carried salt and cold, and the cries of unseen creatures echoed through the mist. No ship dared sail these waters. Even the merfolk of the northern coves were said to avoid them. But Harry had followed the dragon's trail across half a world, and now its fire burned bright before him, calling him onward like a beacon in the dark. The They arrived by broom under the cover of night, the moon a thin blade above the waves. The dragon had been sighted by the locals of Kirkwall, an enormous shadow that flew against the lightning circling the sea cliffs. Yet when Harry and Alara landed upon the black rocks, the sky was empty, the world still. Alara crouched beside a cluster of stones, scorched black. "It was here," she murmured, "not long ago. The magic is still fresh." Harry knelt beside her, brushing ash from the rock. Beneath the soot, faint lines of silver runes glimmered. "Rolls work again," he said. "But these aren't the same. They're older." Alara traced one of the sigils with her wand. "This is binding magic, yes, but older than Raoul by centuries, maybe millennia. Whoever carved these wasn't just controlling dragons, they were summoning them." A low tremor ran through the ground. The sea hissed as waves struck the cliff base, throwing up curtains of spray. Harry straightened, his hand instinctively tightening on his wand. He said he became dragonfire. If that's true, the essence of what he was, the curse, the hunger, it could have found refuge in whatever magic these stones hold. Ilara's expression darkened. "Then we may not be fighting Roll anymore." Thunder boomed, rolling across the waves. The clouds above swirled in a slow, deliberate circle, as though drawn by an unseen hand. Then the sea began to glow, first faintly, then brighter, a light like molten gold spreading through the depths. "Alara," Harry whispered, "step back." The glow surged upward, bursting through the surface. A column of fire and water erupted skyward, and from its heart rose a dragon, like none they had seen before. It was vast beyond comprehension, its scales glimmering silver and flame, its eyes the color of the sea at dawn. But this creature was not whole. Its form wavered as though half spirit, half flesh, and in its chest burned a wound of red light, the remnant of Roll's curse. Harry felt the fire in his arm blaze in answer, the dragon's gaze fixed upon him. The world fell away. Suddenly he stood, not upon the cliffs, but within a memory not his own. He saw through the creature's eyes, the creation of the runes, the taming of the first dragons by an ancient order of wizards, and the binding of flame to mortal soul. He saw a man crowned in light, holding aloft a crystal heart pulsing with fire. "The first flame," the dragon's voice whispered, echoing through his mind. "What was lost must be reborn." Then the vision shattered. Harry gasped, stumbling back as the dragon let out a cry that split the heavens. Lightning flared across the clouds, striking the sea in blinding forks. "What did you see?" Alara shouted over the storm. "The beginning," Harry said breathlessly. "There was a source, a crystal that binds dragonfire to human will. Raoul's curse woke it. It's here, beneath the waves." The dragon reared back, its wings spreading wide, and with a great roar, it descended toward them. The air burned with heat. Ilara raised her wand, but Harry threw out his hand. "No, wait!" he shouted. He stepped forward, his scarred arm glowing like molten gold. The dragon slowed, hovering before him, its eyes filled with an unfathomable sorrow. "I know what you are," Harry said, his voice steady. "You're not our enemy. You're trapped, like the others were." For a moment the dragon's gaze softened, then its head snapped back, and its body convulsed as the wound on its chest flared brighter. The light turned crimson. A deep, terrible voice rose from within it, not the dragon's, but something darker. "You cannot unmake what I have become, Potter." The words chilled him to the bone. It was Roll's voice, distorted and thunderous, echoing through the creature's body. Harry's grip tightened on his wand. "You're already gone, Roll. Let them go." "Gone," the voice laughed, a sound like crackling fire. "I am eternal now. I am the bond between flame and flesh. I am the will of dragons. You, Potter, you carry me too." The fire beneath Harry's skin blazed with sudden agony. He fell to one knee, the light from his arms spreading across his chest like liquid flame. "Harry!" Alara cried, rushing to him. "Fight it!" He gasped through gritted teeth. "He's trying to take control of me, of it all." Alara raised her wand. "Then I'll burn him out." "No," Harry forced out. "If you break the link, you'll destroy the dragon too." The storm raged around them. The dragon's roar became a scream, a clash of will and magic that shook the cliffs. Harry pressed his burning arm against the stone, channeling all his strength, all his fury into a single thought. "You don't own this fire." For a heartbeat, the world went silent. Then a burst of light exploded outward, so bright it blinded them both. When the glare faded, the dragon lay still upon the rocks, its massive wings folded against the earth. The wound in its chest was gone. Only faint wisps of smoke rose from where the light had burned. Alara dropped to her knees beside Harry. "Are you—" He opened his eyes. The golden glow had dimmed, leaving only a faint shimmer beneath the skin. "I'm still here." "And Roll?" Harry looked toward the fallen dragon. "Gone. For good this time." The creature stirred, lifting its head weakly. Its eyes, now clear as amber, met his. Then with a slow, graceful movement, it spread its wings and rose into the air. The storm broke apart as it climbed, sunlight piercing through the clouds for the first time in days. Alara exhaled, tears glinting in her eyes. "It's free." Harry nodded, his voice soft. "They all are." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of salt and flame. The sea calmed. As the dragon vanished into the brightening sky, Harry stood at the cliff's edge, the fire within him finally still. Alara touched his arm gently. "What happens now?" He looked to the horizon where the last traces of storm faded into light. "Now the dragons will return to their ancient places, and He paused, glancing down at his hand. The faint shimmer remained. "I'll learn to live with what's left of their fire." She smiled faintly. "You always were better with impossible burdens." Harry chuckled under his breath. "And you always turn up right when I need someone to share them." The sun rose higher, gilding the cliffs in gold. Somewhere far above, a dragon's cry echoed, a sound not of rage or sorrow, but of freedom. Harry turned away from the sea, his cloak whipping in the wind. "Come on," he said. "We've got a long way back." As they walked, the light caught the faint scales upon his arm, glinting like a promise. The world had been scarred by fire, but from that wound something new had been born. And deep within his heart, Harry knew the fire of dragons was not meant to be feared. It was meant to be carried. A fortnight passed before the storm in the north quieted, and by the time Harry and Alara returned to London, spring had begun to stir. Green crept between the cobblestones, and the air smelled faintly of rain and smoke from the chimneys. The city seemed peaceful, as though the world itself had turned a page, yet Harry carried the weight of what had happened in the north. Like an ember that refused to cool, the ministry was abuzz when they returned. Reports of magical disturbances had spread across the continent, flickers of dragon fire seen in the skies of Norway, in the caverns of Iceland, even as far south as the Alps. Most were harmless, faint echoes, of the chaos Roll had unleashed, but some were stranger still. Magical creatures had begun to act differently, restless, alert, as though sensing something beyond human comprehension. Kingsley summoned Harry to his office the next morning. The minister's face was grave as he gestured for Harry to sit. "You've stirred a storm, my friend," he said quietly. "Whatever you did in the north has changed more than you realize." Harry gave a tired smile. "Seems to be a habit of mine." "I'm not jesting." Kingsley leaned forward, folding his hands. "The Department of Mysteries believes the magic that bound the dragons was older than we ever imagined. They've been detecting surges of ancient power, spells that predate wandcraft itself." Harry's brow furrowed. "You think it's connected to Roll's enchantments?" "I think it's connected to you." Kingsley's voice was low, but not accusing. "The Unspeakables ran tests on the residual magic from the north. It matches the energy your team recorded during the Battle of Hogwarts. Only stronger. You're carrying something new, Harry, and that worries them." Harry looked down at his arm. The faint shimmer still lingered beneath the skin, though he had learned to hide it beneath his sleeve. "I can control it," he said simply. "It's not Roll's magic anymore, it's something else." Kingsley's eyes softened. "I believe you, but others won't. The board's already murmuring about containment measures, observation requests." Harry stood abruptly. "I'm not a weapon." "I know that," Kingsley said, calm but firm. "But power like this, people will fear it. You must tread carefully." Harry nodded once and turned toward the door. "I'll handle it." Outside the minister's office, Alara was waiting. She saw his face and said nothing until they were beyond earshot. "They don't trust it, do they?" "No," he said, "and they're right not to. They've seen what dark magic does when it gets out of control. They're afraid history will repeat itself." Alara gave a small, sad smile. "Then we'll make sure it doesn't." That night they met with Hermione in the old cafe near Diagon Alley. She listened intently as Harry recounted what had happened in the north. The summoning circle, the ancient runes, the dragon that carried Roll's last remnant. When he finished, Hermione's expression was thoughtful, but there was concern in her eyes. "You said the dragon spoke to you," she said softly. "Or at least that you heard it. That shouldn't be possible, even with legilimency. Dragon minds are different, elemental." "I didn't hear words," Harry said. "I saw memories, images. It was like standing inside its thoughts." Hermione leaned back, her quill hovering over parchment. "Then perhaps you've inherited more than a spark of its magic. You might be connected to them now, linked by the same fire that freed them." Alara nodded slowly. "That would explain why the dragons haven't returned to their old nesting grounds. They're waiting for something or someone." Harry frowned. "Waiting for what?" Before either could answer, the window panes rattled. A flash of light streaked across the night sky outside, followed by a thunderous boom. People on the street cried out, pointing upward. Through the glass, Harry saw it. A streak of flame, soaring over the rooftops, vanishing toward the river. He was already on his feet. "Come on." They sprinted through the rain-slick streets, wands drawn, the smell of smoke thick in the air. The trail led them to the edge of the Thames, where water hissed and steamed around a dark, massive shape. A dragon, smaller than the others but fierce and wild, struggled in the shallows, its wings tangled in chains of black iron, The lynx burned with cursed fire sinking into its scales. Harry's pulse quickened. Roll's enchantment, nay, they're back. Alara raised her wand. They're spreading. Someone's reawakening them. From the shadows beyond the riverbank came a low voice. Not someone, Potter. Something. A figure stepped into the light of the burning river. A hooded man, tall and gaunt, his robes marked with old runes that glowed faintly blue. His face was hidden, but his voice carried the cold certainty of one who spoke with purpose. You broke the bindings, the stranger said, and in doing so you woke the heart of flame. It cannot be destroyed, only claimed. Harry took a step forward, wand ready. Who are you? A keeper, the man replied, a servant of the fire that was before men knew words. You think you freed the dragons, but you merely unsealed their true nature. Alara's eyes widened. You mean the fire itself has a will? The man inclined his head. It always has. Raoul sought to master it. You, Potter, became it. But fire cannot belong to one man. It will seek balance, and to do so it will burn. Before they could react, the stranger raised his hand. The chains binding the dragon erupted in flame, snapping apart. The creature roared, lifting into the air in a burst of steam and light. The man vanished with it, leaving only scorched stone behind. Harry stared at the river, jaw tight. He's right about one thing. The fire's still alive, and now it's loose again. Hermione's voice trembled. What will you do? He turned toward her, the light of the burning river reflecting in his eyes. Find it before it finds me. That night, sleep eluded him. The echo of the dragon's roar haunted his thoughts, and with it came whispers, soft, ancient voices calling from somewhere deep within the fire that now lived in his blood. When dawn came, he rose and stood by the window, watching the pale sun rise over London. He flexed his hand, and golden light shimmered faintly beneath the skin. Alara joined him, silent for a long time. At last she said, If the fire has will, it won't stop until it's whole again. I know, he said. Then we follow where it leads. Outside the wind shifted, carrying the scent of smoke and salt from the east. Harry's heart quickened. Somewhere across the sea the dragons called again, and the ember within him answered. He turned to Alara, his expression calm but resolute. Pack what you need, we're not done yet. And as they left the quiet streets behind, the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, gilding the city in gold. It gleamed like flame on the water, bright and fleeting, an omen of fire reborn and of the trials yet to come. The journey east took them through lands where the old magic still lingered, forests where the trees whispered in languages long forgotten, and ruins that glowed faintly when touched by moonlight. The trail of the fire led always forward, winding toward the horizon like a living pulse, restless and bright. Harry and Alara traveled by night, guided by the faint shimmer that ran beneath his skin. For whenever the fire stirred, it pointed their path. After a week, they reached the far coast of Europe, where the Black Sea lay wide and silver beneath a restless sky. The villages there spoke of omens, flames that danced upon the waves, shadows of wings that crossed the moon. Few dared venture near the water, and those who did swore that the sea burned at its heart. They found shelter in an abandoned watchtower overlooking the cliffs. The stones were cold, worn smooth by centuries of wind. Harry built a small fire, though he needed no warmth from it. The glow of the dragon's flame within him had grown stronger, more insistent, as though it recognized the nearness of its kin. Alara stood by the window, her cloak rippling in the sea wind. "The fire's gathering again," she said. "It's not random. It's calling the dragons home." Harry looked up from the flame. "You think it's trying to rebuild what Roll destroyed?" "Perhaps. Or perhaps it's something older, a memory of what dragons once were." She turned toward him, her eyes sharp in the half-light. "Whatever happens, Harry, you're the only one who can reach it now. You're the only one it listens to." Harry said nothing. He could feel the truth of her words deep within his bones. The fire no longer felt foreign. It pulsed in rhythm with his heart, steady and alive, whispering fragments of thought, echoes of dragons long dead, of mountains of flame, of skies filled with wings. That night sleep came in flashes. He dreamt of the sea divided by a single beam of light, and at its center a great heart of fire beating beneath the waves. He awoke before dawn, sweat cold on his brow, and knew what the dream meant. The source, the first flame, was here. They took to the cliffs at sunrise. The wind howled, carrying with it the cry of gulls and the distant rumble of waves. Below, the sea shone like molten glass, and from its depths rose a faint, rhythmic glow. Alara's voice was hushed with awe. "It's alive," Harry nodded. "It's waiting." Together they descended toward the water's edge, the stones slick beneath their boots. The air shimmered with heat as they approached, though the day was cool. When they reached the rocks nearest the sea, the glow erupted into brilliance. A column of fire rose from the waves, twisting like a serpent of light, and from within that fire came a voice, not human, not dragon, but something greater, ancient as the earth itself. "Bearer of the flame," it said, each word a tremor that shook the ground. "You carry what was lost. You return what was taken. Why do you come?" Harry stepped forward, the wind whipping his cloak. "To end what Roll began," he said, "to free the dragons and to give their fire peace." The sea shuddered. The light flared. "Peace?" the voice repeated. "There is no peace in creation. Fire lives to burn. It consumes and renews. Would you extinguish life itself?" "I'd stop it from being twisted again," Harry said firmly. "Your flame was made to live, not to destroy." The light grew brighter, and through it, shapes began to form. Dragons of pure flame, circling above the sea, their eyes vast and sorrowful. "You speak as though you are not part of us," the voice said, "yet our fire burns in your blood. You are bound to us as we are to you. You cannot undo what you have become." Harry's arm burned with fierce light. He clenched his fist, feeling the fire surge through him like a living tide. "Then I'll carry it," he said. "If that's what it takes to keep it from falling into darkness again, I'll bear it." A long silence followed. The sea stilled. Then the light dimmed, and the voice spoke once more, softer this time. "So be it, keeper of flame. But know this, the fire does not serve. It chooses. If you carry it, you must let it live. You must become its will or be consumed." Alara stepped forward, her hand trembling. "He's already proven himself. He freed you once before. Don't test him again." The light rippled, and one of the dragons descended, its wings trailing sparks. It landed upon the water as though it were solid ground. When it spoke, its voice was the whisper of embers. "We do not test, we remember. Once, long ago, men and dragons shared the fire, but greed broke the bond. You, child of wand and scar, have rekindled what was lost. Guard it well, for the age of flame is not over." Harry raised his hand, and the dragon bowed its great head. The fire that blazed along its body flowed toward him, wrapping around his arm like liquid light. It sank into his skin, merging with the ember that already lived within him. Pain and power mingled until he could no longer tell them apart. For a heartbeat, the world vanished. There was only light and wind and the roar of wings. When the brilliance faded, the sea was calm again. The dragons were gone, their fire carried into the sky like sparks on the wind. Only the faint glow upon Harry's arm remained, steady as a heartbeat. Alara's voice broke the silence. What did they do? Harry took a slow breath. They gave me their trust, or their burden. I can't tell which. He looked out over the horizon where the first light of morning touched the waves. The world seemed larger now, wider, deeper, filled with unseen things, waiting to wake. The first flame still burns, he said quietly, but it's not bound anymore. It's part of me now, part of us. Alara smiled faintly. Then the dragons will never be enslaved again. Not while I live, he said. They turned back toward the cliffs as the wind began to rise. Behind them, the sea glowed faintly as though the fire beneath still watched. For the first time in many months, Harry felt no weight of dread, only purpose. As they climbed, Alara glanced at him. What will you tell the ministry? The truth, Harry said, that the dragons are free, that the fire's safe. And if they ask who guards it? He met her eyes, his expression calm but resolute. Then I'll tell them it has no master, only a keeper. High above, the clouds broke apart, and sunlight spilled across the cliffs. The light caught on Harry's sleeve, where faint golden scales shimmered beneath the fabric. He flexed his fingers, and the warmth within him answered like a living thing. For the first time since the curse was born, the fire no longer burned, it breathed, and as the two of them walked toward the rising sun, Harry felt in his heart that this was not an ending but a beginning. The dragons had returned to the sky, and their fire lived on within him, ancient, untamed, and eternal. The world did not stay quiet for long. Word of the northern fire spread faster than wind. Rumors whispered in taverns and markets, written in shaky ink across owl-carried letters. Wizards spoke of Harry Potter, the Auror who had touched dragonfire and lived. Some called him chosen once more. Others called him cursed. Either way, he could not walk the streets without feeling the eyes that followed him. He spent the days that followed trying to return to the rhythm of ordinary life, but the ordinary no longer fit him. The fire beneath his skin would not fade. At times when his temper stirred or his thoughts grew fierce, the air around him would shimmer faintly. Spells he once cast with ease now burned brighter and wilder, their edges laced with gold. The younger Aurors whispered that he no longer used wand magic alone, but something older, something that answered only to him. Alara stayed close, helping him to measure and master the power that had taken root. They trained in the deep vaults beneath the ministry, away from the eyes of the curious. There, wards shimmered like invisible walls, meant to hold back any surge too strong for a human body. Focus, she said, her wand raised as another wave of heat rolled from him. The fire follows your will, but it tests it too. Don't command. Ask. Harry took a slow breath, forcing the light to still. It dimmed, flickering once before fading. He exhaled sharply. It feels alive, he said, like it listens, but chooses when to obey. That's because it remembers being free, she replied softly. The dragon's fire is not meant to be caged by words. He met her gaze. Then maybe it shouldn't be caged at all. Alara lowered her wand. And if you let it loose, what happens then? Harry didn't answer. The question lingered between them like a spark refusing to die. That evening he walked alone through the quiet streets near Grimmauld Place. The air smelled of rain and iron. He paused beneath a lamp post, watching the golden glow tremble against the darkness. Once that light had meant safety to him, proof that the night could be held at bay. Now it seemed fragile. He thought of the dragons soaring above the sea, of the voice that had called him Keeper of Flame. He had promised to guard their fire, not wield it, yet even promises made in light could cast long shadows. The first sign of trouble came days later. A messenger from the Department for the Regulation of Magical Creatures burst into the Auror office, pale and shaking. "A dragon," he gasped. "Sighted over Wales. The fire, it wasn't natural." Harry was already on his feet. "Show me where." Within the hour, he and Alara were flying north. Clouds gathered thick and black, heavy with storm. When they broke through, lightning flashed across the sky, and there, above the mountains, a great crimson dragon wheeled through the rain, its scales aglow with golden light. But it was not wild. The fire that blazed within it was the same that burned in Harry's veins. He could feel it, answering to his heartbeat, as if the creature were part of him. "It's calling to you," Alara shouted over the wind. Harry nodded grimly. "Or I'm calling to it." They landed upon a ridge, the dragon circling overhead. Its roar shook the stones beneath their feet. Harry stepped forward, wand lowered. "Easy," he said. "I'm not your enemy." The dragon descended in a burst of steam and rain. It lowered its head until its golden eyes met his, and in that gaze, Harry saw not fury, but confusion. A creature bound by instinct to a master it did not understand. "Harry," Alara warned, "if it's connected to you, anything you do—" "I know." He raised his hand slowly. The mark along his arm blazed, brighter than it had since the northern sea. The dragon's fire echoed it, flaring like the reflection of a mirror. Then, in one shared heartbeat, the link between them solidified. A vision struck him. Memories that were not his own, mountains burning, skies torn by wings, and a vast shadow stirring beneath the earth. The dragons were restless. The fire was spreading through them, no longer bound by Roll or his curse, but by something older still, the will of the flame itself. He stumbled back, gasping. "It's waking them, all of them." Alara's eyes widened. "The fire? Yes, it's moving from dragon to dragon, reuniting what was divided. It's not finished." Thunder boomed across the valley. The dragon before them roared again, this time in pain. Its wings flared, and fire erupted skyward, golden and furious. Harry reached out instinctively, channeling his own flame to calm it. The two forces met, dragon and man, magic and will, until the fire folded inward and the creature's rage subsided. When it lifted its head again, its eyes were clear. It bowed as the silver one once had, and then rose into the storm, vanishing among the clouds. Harry dropped to one knee, exhausted. Alara rushed to him. "What did you do?" He managed a faint smile. "What I promised. I kept it safe." She helped him stand. "The ministry will hear about this. They'll see it as proof that you've become something more than human." "Maybe I have," he said quietly. "But the fire's not a curse. It's a duty." They returned to London by dawn, weary and silent. Already the prophet carried headlines: "Dragon seen over Snowdonia," "Horror Potter involved." Kingsley called for him again that morning, concern etched deep into his face. "Harry," he said, "I've stood beside you through every storm since the war. But this is different. The world is watching. You can't fight dragons and expect them to stay silent." "I'm not fighting them," Harry replied. "I'm protecting them, protecting us." Kingsley sighed. "And if the fire decides you're not enough to hold it?" Harry looked toward the window where sunlight poured in, warm and bright. "Then I'll make myself enough." After that day, the pattern began, dragons stirring in distant lands, and Harry called to quiet them, to mend the balance between flame and world. He became a myth reborn. Some said savior, others omen. Wherever he went, fires died without destroying, and the skies grew clear again. Yet each time he used the power, the light beneath his skin burned longer, leaving faint scales across his arm and shoulder, marks that no spell could erase. Ilara kept count, marking each scar as a sign not of corruption, but of transformation. "The dragons remember through you," she said one night, as they stood beneath the stars. "You're what they once hoped men would be." He gave a weary smile. "Let's hope they're not disappointed." The wind rose, carrying with it a distant roar, soft, ancient, and filled with something that might have been pride. Harry looked toward the dark horizon, feeling the fire stir again within him. It no longer frightened him. It was life, fierce and bright, asking only to be guided. "Come on," he said, turning to Ilara. "The world still burns in places we haven't seen." And as they set off into the night, the sky behind them flared with a faint line of gold, the breath of a dragon somewhere far away, and the answer of the one who bore its flame. The summer that followed was unlike any Harry had known. Across the world, dragons stirred from their hidden realms, no longer chained by spells or fear, but drawn by something older and stronger, the call of the flame that lived now within him. Reports came daily to the Auror office of strange lights in the night sky, of roars that echoed over mountains, of scales found in places long untouched by magic. The ministry fretted and argued, issuing decrees and reassurances, but none could deny what had begun. The age of dragons was returning. Harry found little rest. Each week brought new summons, from Romania to the high peaks of Tibet, from the deserts of Egypt to the storm-swept cliffs of Ireland. Wherever a dragon appeared, he followed, not as hunter, but as keeper. Sometimes he found chaos, whole valleys of flame, rivers of molten glass. But when he reached out with the fire inside him, the beasts would bow their heads, the flames would cool, and silence would follow. He was learning their language, not of words, but of instinct and will. He felt their hearts beat in rhythm with his own. The fire no longer fought him. It guided him. And yet, with each dragon tamed, with each surge of power quieted, he felt a little more of himself slipping away. Ilara traveled beside him always, recording their journey in notebooks filled with runes and sketches. "You're changing," she said one evening as they camped in the ruins of a Roman watchtower overlooking the Mediterranean. The sea burned with sunset, gold and crimson, and the air shimmered faintly around him. "The dragon's magic, it's making you into something else." Harry gazed out toward the horizon. "Something human still, I hope." Her eyes softened. "Something more. But even fire needs rest, Harry." He smiled faintly. "It never rests. It only waits to be kindled again." She reached across the embers of their campfire, her hand brushing his. "And if it consumes you, then I'll burn doing what's right." That night the dream returned, the vision of the first flame beneath the sea, beating like a heart. But this time it called to him not in warning, but in welcome. He woke with the sound of wings in his ears. By dawn they were already on the move. The latest reports spoke of a storm forming over the North Sea, fiercer than any known in a century. Lightning flashed red and gold within its depths. The locals whispered of dragons seen circling above it, scores of them drawn together by a single purpose. When Harry and Alara reached the coast, the sky was black with cloud. Rain lashed the cliffs and the sea heaved as though alive. Through the storm they glimpsed them, dozens of dragons, vast and gleaming, wheeling in patterns that defied reason. "They're gathering," Alara shouted over the wind. But for what? Harry felt it then, the pulse of the flame, deep within his chest, answering theirs. The storm was no accident. The fire that had slept for ages was calling its children home. He stepped to the cliff's edge, the wind tearing at his cloak. "It's not chaos," he said. "It's a summoning." Alara's face was pale in the lightning. From whom? The flame itself. The sky split open. A pillar of golden fire erupted from the heart of the storm, reaching toward the heavens. The dragons roared in answer, their cries weaving into a single thunderous song. The sound tore through the clouds, shaking the earth. Harry turned to Alara. "If this is their reckoning, I have to go." "You'll be killed." "Then so be it." He took her hand briefly, the warmth of it steadying him. "If I don't return, make sure they remember we tried." Before she could answer, he stepped forward and vanished into the storm. The world dissolved into fire and light. Dragons soared around him, their wings cutting through flame as easily as air. At the center of it all hung the first flame, no longer hidden beneath sea or stone. It burned with the brightness of the sun, alive and conscious. "Keeper of flame," the voice said, filling the storm. "You have carried our gift well, but the balance must be restored. Magic, once torn apart, now seeks to be whole." Harry hovered within the storm's heart, his hair whipping in the wind. "If becoming whole means burning the world, I won't allow it." "You cannot choose," the voice replied. "Fire chooses for itself." "Then let it choose me," Harry said, "not the world." Silence. Then the light flared brighter than ever before. He felt the fire pour into him, not as pain but as memory. Centuries of dragon's flight, of creation and ruin, of the first spark that lit the stars. Every heartbeat echoed with their song. He saw Rowell's madness, the greed of men, and beyond it all, the truth. The dragons had never been beasts of destruction, but guardians of the living flame that sustained magic itself. When the storm finally broke, Alara saw him fall from the clouds. She flew on her broom to catch him, the wind howling around her. They landed hard upon the cliffs, lightning fading behind them. He was alive, but his eyes burned, faintly gold. "Harry," she whispered, "what did it do to you?" He sat up slowly, the rain hissing on the stone. The fire within him no longer hurt. It hummed, steady and sure. "It didn't destroy me," he said. "It made me its keeper in truth. The flame is part of the world again. It won't vanish, but it won't burn uncontrolled. Not while I live." Alara studied him, awe and sorrow mingling in her gaze. "Then it's over," he nodded. "For now." They watched the sky together as the last of the dragons vanished into the clouds, their silhouettes fading like smoke. The sea below grew calm, reflecting the dawn. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "what it's all for? Why it always falls to you?" Harry smiled faintly, his eyes on the horizon. Because someone has to stand where fire meets shadow. I've done it before. I'll do it again. When they returned to London, the storm had already become legend. The ministry declared the dragons at peace and magic restored. Yet those who passed Harry Potter in the streets would swear that the air around him shimmered faintly, as though he carried a sun within him. He settled again into his duties, though nothing about him was ordinary. His spells were sharper now, his senses keener. Children who saw him said his eyes looked like dawn, breaking through mist. And sometimes on nights when thunder rolled across the sky, he would pause, glance upward, and smile, as if answering a distant call. Ilara stayed by his side, a scholar of flame and friend beyond measure. Together they watched a world reborn, one where dragons soared once more across the edge of myth. And though the years would pass and new tales would rise, the legend of the Keeper of Flame would endure, the wizard who bore the wound of a dragon and turned it into light. For even as the ages shifted and the fires of magic dimmed, the embers he carried never died. Deep within his heart, where once there had been only scar and pain, the first flame still burned, gentle, eternal, and alive. And when the last dragon finally sang its farewell to the sky, the world would know that Harry Potter had kept his promise. The fire endured, the world endured, and in the quiet between storms, the light of dragons lingered forever.